and they finish around 500, that is not a bad thing, in my opinion, especially if it's Will Levis, because you're going to have found something out about him. Welcome in to the Hot Read Podcast. I'm your host, Easton Freeze, Director of Published Content here at BroadwaySportsMedia.com. We're also brought to you by the 440 Podcast Network. You can follow me on social media at Easton Freeze. I am not joined by my producer, JT. He'll be joining us later in the show today, kind of a different one. I am here not with my recording setup at all in an airport in Edinburgh, Scotland. By the end of this episode, I will be in Dublin, Ireland. And so it's going to be a piecemeal episode, but we've got a couple of things to discuss today that even while I'm on vacation with my wife and her family, having a great time over here in the British Isles, needs to discuss some things with the Titans. And I'm going to spend about 15-20 minutes here at the top of the show. Here's how today's going to work. Talking about two big ideas that I have floating around in my head and things that I think are important for the Titans over this bye week. Then I'll be joined by producer JT when I have flown from Edinburgh to Dublin. We'll discuss the best Bet Gauntlet as well as any news from the week, and that will be our show for today. I appreciate everybody tuning in with us, even though we've got some extenuating circumstances over this bye week, me on vacation, JT and I both being in London. Not to bore you too much with my travels and personal life, but maybe to give you something interesting, a little anecdote from my travels. I was in London first, obviously, covering the Titans game with JT, and I had my backpack stolen from King's Cross train station in the heart of London, actually getting ready to leave London to come up here to Edinburgh, Scotland. I was sitting at a cafe editing the show, doing some work before I hopped on the train, and my backpack was right at my feet, and I have been kicking myself ever since for not paying more attention to it. I should have had it looped around my ankle or something. A tough lesson to learn, for sure. And I think it was a bit of a tag team situation. A beggar comes up to me on the opposite side of me of my bag asking for change. They take my attention. I speak to them really quick, turn around. The moment of seconds, my backpack is gone. I get up, I run around. It's a busy train station. You know, Harry Potter went to King's Cross. He got to go to Hogwarts. I went to King's Cross and I lost like $700 worth of stuff, as well as my passport. So I was marooned here in the British Isles for all of 72 hours, terrified, not sure how that worked when you get marooned and you lose your passport or have it stolen. Like in my case, what happens? I had to go to the U.S. Consulate General in Edinburgh, Scotland. They gave me a good look over. I had to fill out a bunch of paperwork and so sign my soul over to the devil and do all these things, and it was a big pain in the butt. But ultimately, they gave me this, which is a purple emergency passport book. If you're watching with us on YouTube, this is my emergency passport. I got some photographer in Scotland to take my picture, and they slapped it in there, and they said, "Here's this. You can get home with it." And then you have to go through all the passport rigmarole again and get a new passport. So, not the souvenir that I wanted or wished for or would ever want again. Now that I have it, kind of a cool keepsake, an emergency purple passport. I gave it to the guy here at the airport, and he did a real double take. Like, what is this? Is this the worst attempt at a fake passport ever? No, it's a very special passport that allows me to get home. Please and thank you. Titans. Let's talk about that. Before we do, two quick things. One, our terrific and wonderful sponsors, BoomBozz Pizza. We are missing out on BoomBozz Pizza live on Thursday night for 2 weeks in a row, which blows. I am licking my lips over here in Europe, thinking about getting back to BoomBozz in Spring Hill, Tennessee, one of their 3 locations in Middle Tennessee. We are live every Thursday before Thursday Night Football. JT and I doing the Hot Read podcast, talking Titans over at BoomBozz in Spring Hill every single week. These were the only 2 weeks we were going to miss. So starting next Thursday through the rest of the season, we will be there doing shows live. But today I am here in Edinburgh and Dublin. But they have fantastic, fantastic food, and they are our sponsors not only because we enjoy doing business with them, but because we enjoy their food. We love going over there and having some of the delicious craft pizza they have. Again, Spring Hill, Nashville, in East Nashville, they have a location, and then in Murfreesboro, as well as locations in Kentucky and in Indiana if you're from out of town. Got to check them out. 4-time winners at the International Pizza Expo in Las Vegas. The only pizza company in America to have won twice at the International Pizza Championships. They're great. Okay, go give them a try. Do not knock it until you try it. BoomBozz Pizza, some of the best, most creative pizza you will ever have. and you won't regret going and checking them out. We appreciate their sponsorship, their partnership with us. One last thing before we talk Titans. If you're not subscribed to the Hot Read Podcast YouTube channel, it's Broadway Sports Media on YouTube. You need to go over there, not just watch the show live there, or not live, usually live, today recorded, but watch the show from there in its video form, the full true format of the show, as well as subscribe to the Broadway Sports Media YouTube account. We know a lot of you watch but aren't subscribed, so please do that for us. It'll be very helpful. Now, Titans, 2 quick talking points before we transition. And we do a time jump to when I'm in Dublin. We're talking with JT about the best Bet Gauntlet, which continues to steam on, by the way, 35 and 25 on the year, doing well, making money. We'll continue that this week. But the talking points that I find interesting over this 5 weeks for the Titans, and 2 things that I want us to discuss today. Obviously, Will Levis is the greatest topic of discussion, greatest topic of concern, the biggest talking point this bye week for the Titans. And for good reason. It is so unbelievably eminently clear that he is the guy you have to roll with, assuming Ryan Tannehill cannot play in week 8 against Atlanta. There really is no argument. Otherwise, it has to happen. And if it doesn't, not only is it, I know how my buddy Zach Lyons called it a borderline fireable offense on a football show this week. I have to agree with him. We'll cross that river when we get there. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. But what it would tell us about how this team perceives Will Levis and or the stubbornness of this coaching staff and or the power dynamics between the front office and the coaching staff, wow, there'd be a lot to unpack there. I'm going to assume that's not going to happen because, again, it is so unbelievably clear, I think, to anybody that knows anything about this team. Levis has to be the guy. But the most popular question and talking point surrounding Levis jumping from quarterback 3, the emergency quarterback on this team's roster, up to starter over a bye week is just that. If he's the obvious guy, well, then why was he the emergency quarterback for the first 6 weeks of the season, 6 games of the year? Why was he inactive each and every week? And Malik Willis was the clear and obvious backup for this team. Really no debate ever since training camp ended. And the answer is simple to me. Willis is seen as the better option in a pinch by this coaching staff. The logic makes sense. It's understandable why, in the case that you need a quarterback to come in mid-game, Malik Willis might be the guy that you want. He's also the more experienced quarterback. But Will Levis is the better option if you're going to properly game plan around a player for a full week or 2 going into that game to try to maintain continuity for this Titans offense. Let's dig into that a little bit. So in the scenario that Tannehill had to come out like he did on Sunday in Tottenham Hotspur Stadium here in London, mid-game, he goes down. You have to have a guy come in. The thinking around Willis being that guy for the first 6 games of the year was that he's the more experienced, more athletic quarterback. He can come in on short notice, game manage, use his legs, run around a little bit, create in that way, and really just try not to give the game away as much as he is expected to actively win the game, if that makes sense. Let's get a guy that we can get in there who we trust. He's not going to throw the game away. We just need him to maybe have a flash here or there, steal a couple yards with his legs, but otherwise that's going to be A-okay for us, and we can try to coast to the rest of the game if and when Ryan Tannehill goes down. With Will Levis, in the scenario like the Titans are now in, we're assuming, with Ryan Tannehill being hurt with an undetermined timeline. I believe Jeremy Fowler was the one who reported this week that it's good news in the sense that he's not having to have another tightrope surgery of any kind like he did at the end of last year, but it's similar to the first bout of ankle injury that he dealt with last season. And so it's, that took him 2 or 3 weeks to come back. When he did, he was kind of hobbled. It's going to be a while for Ryan Tannehill, I think, until he comes back. And it's certainly going to be a while until he comes back and isn't gimpy in that way. But when you do have a situation like this, where you have a full week, or in this case, a full 13 days to game plan around a quarterback, Will Levis is the obvious answer. He is the clear choice because of the way that he plays football, as well as the fact that there's you need to see what you have in him element to this, which is absolutely very important. And absolutely, that alone, you can make the argument, regardless of everything else, you need to know what you have in Will Levis. He was your highly drafted 2nd-round pick. your new GM moved up to get him. This team has put a lot of draft capital the past 2 seasons into the quarterback position. We have a much better idea of what we have in Will Levis than what we have in Will Levis, Malik Willis than Will Levis. You have to know about the second guy so that you can calculate what the future of this team looks like, what your short, medium, and long-term plans are going to be. All of that hinges around the most important position on the field, quarterback. If you have a guy in him, you need to know, and now is the perfect, undeniable opportunity to do so. But with Levis, he can play, and in the college did play this ball control, efficient play action style of offense. The Titans with Ryan Tannehill are intentionally built for the way that they want to and have been operating, even at their best in games against the Chargers, against the Bengals. Those were really efficient ball control, play action, exploiting offenses that scored a decent amount, mid to high 20s, low 30s points. You're going to keep the other offense off the field, and you're going to bleed a team to death. That's the way that Mike Vrabel likes to play football. It's the way that he's been really successful playing football for a long time. Now, those two things make sense, right? Will Levis being a better quarterback full term, if you're needing a guy throughout the week, maybe week to week, while the quarterback is down. Malik Willis being the guy when he is needed in a pinch. And so that's why you need Will Levis now. But I want to pivot now to another idea. What exactly are the ranges of outcome for this Tennessee Titans team for the rest of the season? I know a lot of fans, understandably so, I guess, but more predictably so, in my opinion, are pretty dour on the Titans' short and maybe long-term futures. They're at 2-4 going into the bye. Other teams in the division seem to be in better shape than they are. What exactly are they playing for this year? What exactly does this year mean? And so I want to dive into that a little bit. What can this season mean for the Titans? What is the significance? And I'm vamping here, pulling up my notes. Here we go. So the ranges of outcomes for this team. The number one priority for any team, always, unless you are selling out, if you are the Rams in the year that they won the Super Bowl and you're going all in and you are aggressive buyers at the trade deadline and you are moving future high draft capital in order to get guys now, to compete now, to get a ring now, then this is not the case. But for every other team, even teams that are competing for the Super Bowl, I mean, the Chiefs this year are not all in, right? Their wide receiver core, that's not the wide receiver core of a team that is all in. The Bills are not as all in this year as they were in the past. Like a lot of the contenders this year aren't selling out all the way. And so for the vast majority of teams each year, 29 to 31 teams every single season, the number one priority, not regardless, but besides winning as much as you can and going as far as you can and hopefully finding a way into the Super Bowl and getting a ring, is finding out more answers to questions than the alternative. That's a poor way of phrasing it, but finishing with more answers than questions, right? And I know this is a topic that Stack Alliance discussed this week on a Football and Other Efforts. I think Football and Other Efforts this week he was discussing this, but it's definitely the point of the season for the Titans. It has been really, I think, because it's this competitive rebuild transition year, so that makes sense. But what questions can they answer with their remaining time? Again, 2-4, not a death knell. Taylor Lewan pointing out on Twitter after the Titans lost to the Ravens that in 2019 they were 2-4 and then they went on to win 12 games against the AFC Championship game. I don't think that they have that team this year, but if you'd have asked me at that 2-4 point that season, I probably would have said the same thing. So we'll see. If you know me, I am big on. I love how the NFL is a league in which anything can happen and you can be surprised at every turn. And so I'm not going to rule anything out long term for this team. I think that this season could be as poor as you're getting a top 10, maybe top 5 pick, even if all things go horribly wrong. And I think that they could absolutely still win this division and be a playoff team and have a home playoff game. I think that range of outcomes is still in the cards. The question is, with which quarterbacks you get which outcomes and which outcomes are more favorable than others. The outcome that I think a lot of people are desperate to avoid, and that's why they're anxious right now, wanting the team to tank, wanting them to go all in on giving up on this year, getting a high draft pick, and not trying to compete in 2023, is because they're terrified of finishing around 500, and for good reason. There's a lot of PTSD with Titans fans from the 2000s, where they did a lot of winning and losing and winning and losing and winning and losing all year long, finishing 8-8, Jeff Fisher style. Obviously, you don't want to do that unless you have a promising future. And so my point here is only to say that finishing 500 or around 500 is only really bad for this team if it's with Ryan Tannehill at the helm. If Ryan Tannehill plays the vast majority of the game, say he misses one game in Atlanta, comes back for Thursday Night Football against the Steelers, and so he one of the other two guys gets one start this year. It's Tannehill the rest of the way. They finish 9-7 and miss the playoffs entirely. That's no good. You're not going to get a lot of answers to questions that way. It's going to be a bit of a wasted season ultimately. But finishing 7-9, 7-10, 8-9, 9-8, 10-7. Well, if you finish 10-7, that's good news, I suppose. But right around 500, missing the playoffs. But it's with Will Levis at the helm, or I'm not going to rule out, if it's Malik Willis and they stubbornly put him in and play him, despite fans not wanting that to be the case. Whatever. If it's those guys at the helm for the back 2/3 of the season, or for the majority of the 2/3 of the season, and they finish around 500, that is not a bad thing, in my opinion, especially if it's Will Levis, because you're going to have found something out about him if he plays that much football. And again, that's what this is about, finding out what you have in your asset in Will Levis. If Will Levis finishes 7-9, but he wins, 3 of his last 4, he looks gritty. This team looks to rally around him, start to mesh with his play style. He works well with a Tim Kelly offense. He shows some flashes. He shows what made him a generally first round caliber talent in the NFL, fringe first rounder, and shows you that he can potentially be the future of your team. Then good. That's a 500 season well spent, and you're going into next year with a lot of momentum, and you can build in this upcoming offseason around Will Levis. Alternatively, if you finish with a top 5 pick and Will Levis played the last 10 games or 11 games, great. Now you know that Will Levis is not it. Assuming he was a contributor to all those losses. You're getting a high draft pick in a draft where there is a lot of quarterback talent. So you can start the rebuild, start the reset right now, burn it all down, start from scratch. That's A-okay. With Malik Willis, it's a lot of the same. However, I would only say I think finishing really, really poorly with Malik Willis instead of Will Levis ever playing. If Malik Willis played 11 games and Levis none, then I think that maybe that tells you enough about Levis to know like this team is so dramatically low on him that we can, even though we haven't seen him, we can rule him out. And with Willis, if you finish that poorly, then it's time. Both guys, no bueno, time to reset. If Willis is miraculously great and you win a bunch of games, then maybe you look to start a future around him. And then with Tannehill, he's the guy that can come back in and potentially get you to a playoff game. I'm not going to rule out the possibility, by the way, of Will Levis coming in, playing the last 11 games in this bad AFC South, somehow putting together a playoff run, maybe as a wild card, maybe as a division winner. And this team, getting to the playoffs, being one and done in the playoffs with Will Levis this year, again, that is not a bad thing. Yes, you're trying to compete with a quarterback that can be your future. That is the ultimate goal, short and long term. That's getting really your cake and eating it too. Being able to get to the playoffs this year, that would be the number one best case scenario for this team. Will Levis comes in, he plays the last 11 games. You sneak into the playoffs, you're scrappy. Maybe you win a game, maybe you lose immediately, and you bow out in the playoffs. That's great because you got to compete. It's a lot of fun. The team looks good, and you know what you've got in your guy going forward that can be your new franchise quarterback. All right, those are my 2 big thoughts today. I think on our Monday episode, we'll be talking more about potential trade deadline moves that this Titans team can be making. But for now, let's get to producer JT. Bring him in. I'll flash forward from Edinburgh to Dublin, Ireland. Let's talk some NFL news with him and then get to the best bet gauntlet. All right, time jump complete. I was in Edinburgh. Now I'm in Dublin, and I am joined by producer JT. JT, how are you from the States, back in Nashville? I'll be there soon.
Hello.
How are we doing?
Top of the morning to you. Is that the correct term there?
Yes, except it's night, so the opposite of that.
Oh,
I don't know.
Is that an actual phrase? I don't know. But yes,
top of the morning to you, sure, yeah.
I'm here, stateside, still worse for wear, but we're getting through it. The jet lag hit me like a truck on the way back. And so we are slowly but surely crawling back to normalcy here. But excited to be once again.
The Hot Read podcast through the ringer. I mean, holy smokes. Giving you severe illness, taking away my backpack forever. You know what? We paid a price for going to London, but I would do it again in a heartbeat. We're talking news and best bet gauntlet now. And JT, I understand you have some news items for us. So without further ado, let's get to the news, producer JT.
Yeah, we can start off, and whoever is going to be playing quarterback for the Titans next week, as you so graciously dove into earlier, it's going to be important that Derrick Henry is on the field with them. So per Next Gen Stats, when Henry was on the field with Ryan Tannehill had a 67.3 completion percentage, had 9.1 yards per attempt, 2 touchdowns, and 1 interception for a 101.4 passer rating, and had a 25.6 pressure percentage and 3 sacks. When Derrick Henry was off the field, his completion percentage dropped to 55.8%. His yards per attempt also dropped to 5.5 per attempt, 0 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, a 47.2 passer rating with a 46.7% pressure rate, and 16 sacks when Derrick Henry is not on the field. So that just puts in perspective how important it is that Derrick Henry is going to be having to play these games, despite how good Tyjae Spears has been, to just protect one of these 2 younger quarterbacks. Derrick Henry is almost a lock to be on the field. He's a must.
Well, and here's the thing. It's a stat that there's some confirmation bias here for sure, because Henry on and off the field is largely a third down versus first or second down statistic, because Derrick Henry is never on the field on third down unless it's a third and short, a very short. Then on occasion he is there, and Tyjae is coming in to pass protect or run a route on third down in obvious passing situations. This stat is largely a first and second down versus obvious passing situation third down, where you can point to most quarterbacks and say in obvious third and medium, third and long, obvious passing situations, they're going to be worse quarterbacks statistically than on first, second down, where that is not nearly as obvious. They have the threat of play action. They have the threat of being able to run the ball, all of these things. So there's some selection bias there. That being said, I still think that I think it's neither black nor white on this. I think that the Titans are still struggling to figure out just how to best use Tyjae and Derrick, and I think anybody saying that it should be extreme either way is doing it wrong. I think that a balance of the two used correctly is the most effective way that this team can operate in the running game and out of the backfield. And there have been some games where they've done that really well. I actually thought that New Orleans game, they did a pretty good job mixing those two in, except at the end of the game. The Chargers game, obviously, I felt was a really nice mix of like 60-40 Henry Spears. And then the Bengals game was that way as well. So I have no issue with both of them playing a lot of snaps. I think that this team's success is going to be predicated on them really figuring out the best way to utilize those two guys. And clearly they're still trying to figure that out.
Yeah, moving on here, we can talk about Anthony Richardson, your rookie quarterback darling, that is, this season, with some unfortunate news.
Stinks. It stinks.
Yes. Anthony Richardson will miss the rest of the season and undergo shoulder surgery to repair that joint in his shoulder. Colts owner Jim Irsay reported 2 things on this. One, unfortunate, of course, that he is going to have to miss because when he was able to be on the field, he looked really, really good early on. But the big if there is that if he can stay on the field. That'll be a big thing for him going forward. And Shane Steichen said that they hope to see him as early as spring workouts. So he's done for the season. That also means that the Titans will play the Colts again, this time only having to worry about Gardner Minshew the next time they play them. Jim Irsay, though,
by the way,
yes,
he did in fact beat them,
but
yes,
a little bit different of a
very different
game plan.
Assignment. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Jim Irsay, though, I think this is the funniest thing though this week. gave a very crazy Uncle Jim quote in which he
Oh,
said,
it's vintage. It's vintage.
like John Landau said about Bruce Springsteen back in 1974, I've seen the future of rock and roll, and his name is Bruce Springsteen. Well, I've seen the future of the NFL, and his name is Anthony Richardson, and I
Oh,
believe it.
oh, it's such a good quote. It's a great quote,
It's
and
an
I wish
all-timer.
it's an all timer. I wish I could disagree with him. I'm in, Jim. I'm in. I'm with you. I think that I have seen the future
Do you think he's
of the
coping a
NFL
little
and
bit
Anthony Richardson.
with the current
Oh,
situation,
a
or do you think
thousand
he's
percent he's coping. Yes, he's so mad, and I mean, he should be. It stinks. I'm mad, and I'm certainly not a Colts fan, and it stinks to not see him out there. It stinks that the Titans were the ones that broke him. Shout out Harold Landry. Again, not his, I'm being facetious, not his fault, but it was a Harold Landry hit where he was done for the year, and that rotator cuff or whatever, I think it was rotator cuff in the shoulder, whatever it was, the shoulder injury, did him in for the year. It stinks. I really hope he does not have an injury riddled season. There is some PTSD, I'm sure, with Colts fans. Andrew Luck situation, like I think the offensive line and the infrastructure of this team for Indianapolis is better than what Andrew Luck had early on in his career. So in terms of the team getting you killed as a quarterback and potentially shortening your career dramatically is not nearly as big a threat as it was with Luck. But there's still an element of, oh man, please don't ruin this guy like you ruined Luck. Just from a NFL enjoyer perspective, I want to see this guy play football, and so far in that category, I'm concerned.
Yeah, and then one more piece of news here. Sources have said today to a couple people that the Colts and Broncos have had extensive trade discussions about a deal that would send wide receiver
Yeah,
Jerry Jeudy
what
to
are we
Indianapolis.
doing?
No deal has
What?
been finalized or agreed at this time, but has progressed beyond exploratory conversations. And here's my take on this. I liken this to the 2019 Mets, where they essentially said, we're
No.
going to be buyers at the deadline despite being really, really bad. And I think that's exactly what the Colts are doing. They're going to be buyers, even though they're going to be bad, because they think that they can get good value on some pieces right now and take those into next year.
I guess here's the thing. It's not just that. It's worse. It's not just they're going to be buyers at the deadline, despite the fact that they're going to be bad and trying to all of that I agree with. But it's also that they're going to be buyers, and they're going to be like a blind man walks into a grocery store and just grabs items, just frantically picks up things that are available and throws them into the basket and walks home with them. Like, what are we doing shopping for Jerry Jeudy for Indianapolis? If you're in on Jerry Jeudy, fine, whatever. If you think that he's going to be a nice piece to pair with Pittman and be a nice receiving core for Richardson in the future, fine. I'm not in on Jerry's game. I'm not in on his vibe. I'm not in on him on or off the field. If you're a Titans fan, you should root for this because it's going to be expensive.
It would certainly bring in another big personality to a team that already has a few of those.
It would. So I kind of will be surprised if there's actually anything to this. If they pull this trigger, I'm not sure what I'm going to have to say. It's going to be pretty astonishing.
And that's going to do it for our news on this very boring bye week here for the Titans.
Yeah, that's producer JT with the news. Appreciate that. Time for the best bet gauntlet, JT, and time to update the folks on how this year has gone for us overall. A fantastic year continues along. We got out of our week in London with a 5-5 week as a show. I went 2-3, a very frustrating 2-3, I might add. I was 2 missed field goals inside of 45 yards away from going 4-1, which is infuriating, but 2-3 nonetheless. JT, you eked out a 3-2 winning week again. Your reign of the hot hands, plural, it's a double hot hand at this point, continues along the tracks. As a show, we are at 66% on the year, which is ultimately what we care about, and ultimately a fantastic number to have through 6 weeks and through 60 total bets. 35-25 on the year, making a lot of money for those that are betting along with us. I am 14-16 with some work to do this week. You are an unbelievable 21-9. Keep it up, my friend. The ball is still in my court. I still have the first pick. And I am really excited that I had the first pick this week because I love my first pick. And my first pick of the week 7, week 6 best bet. No, week 7,
Week
right? So
7, yes.
Yeah, here we go. The week 7 best bet gauntlet. My first pick is going to be Tampa Bay -2.5 hosting the Atlanta Falcons. Some numbers and reasoning on this one. This is a big bounce back spot for a Tampa Bay team that did not look great last week. A pretty big letdown game for them against who were they
Detroit.
playing last? Detroit. Thank you. Against Detroit, a lot of yards and points left out there on the field by Baker Mayfield. Some deep passes that were there for the completing, and he under or overthrew them. Mike Evans' big drop that would have resulted in a massive play and potentially swung the game. But I love getting Tampa Bay under the field goal here, again, at home. They are statistically better than Atlanta in every category this season in terms of rush yards, passing yards, run defense, passing defense, sack rate, pressure rate. I went through the whole gamut, 12 plus statistical categories. They are better than Atlanta in some by a little and in some by a lot. They are simply the better team right now. I love this bounce back spot after being brought down back to earth last week. Baker left all those points and yards out there on the table. The Bucs defense, I think, has the ability to handle what is a somewhat one-dimensional offense of Atlanta. Desmond Ridder, for his flaws, has had 2 good weeks back-to-back, 300 plus passing yards for the past 2 weeks. I'm kind of expecting him to come back down to earth. I don't think that's going to happen for a 3rd straight week. So I think that he's due to chill out a little bit this week. And Atlanta is a bottom 5 DVOA defense. I think that Tampa Bay is going to have a much, much better time this week against this Atlanta defense than they did against Detroit. Give me Tampa Bay to win by a field goal or more.
Yeah, I really like that bet this week. With my first pick, I'm taking the Los Angeles Chargers headed into Arrowhead against Kansas City plus 5.5. Here's why a little bit. It comes down to Justin Herbert, who has been really good against the spread against this Kansas City team. This will be the 7th career game versus the Chiefs, 6th career game against Mahomes. Versus Kansas City, he may only be 2-4 straight up, but is 5-1 against the spread against Kansas City. And then when he plays Mahomes, only 1-4 straight up, but 4-1 against the spread. When Herbert is a dog of 5 or more, like he is in this matchup, currently 5.5, he is 7-0 against the spread. So in these games where he is playing the Kansas City Chiefs, he plays them close. These two teams always play really, really close, I feel like, no matter where it is. Mahomes versus the AFC West is only 16-14-1 against the spread, so I'm expecting a very close game, so that's why I'm taking the Chargers plus 5.5 this week.
Yeah, I love it. It's the correct bet. I was hoping you wouldn't take it so that I could double dip on my favorite bets of the week. Love this. I'll be betting it myself. Mahomes over a field goal. Got to do it. Got to do it. My next bet is, I mean, it really is gross, and I don't expect any of our listeners to tail me on this one, although they should. I'm gonna try my best to sell you on it. But boy, oh boy, is it gross. We talked last week a lot, JT, about catching the falling knife. In betting, when that knife is dropping and a team is seemingly free falling, the best bettors in the world, the pros, the ones that make bank, they catch that falling knife at the right time, at the last minute, by the handle and not the blade, and avoid getting cut. Last week, I tried to catch this falling knife, and apparently I was early. I wasn't going to be early if there was going to be a made field goal inside of 45 yards by Bailey Groupie, the guy that the Patriots decided to keep over old man granddaddy strong legs here in Tennessee. But nonetheless, they barely don't cover last week for me, and I get cut by the falling knife. This week, I've got to do it. I've got to take New England getting 9 points at home, 9-point home dogs against the Buffalo Bills. Number one, it's a pros Joe's game. Okay. Only 30% of the bets on New England, but 64% of the money, the big money bettors, are on this New England team, a 34% differential there. It's in Foxborough. So there's going to be that element of Foxborough magic. This is, by the way, JT, it is the largest spread as a dog that Bill Belichick has ever had at home since Tom Brady's first game all those years ago. So this is kind of some new territory for this New England team. And the number is simply too big. New England's offensive line has been really egregiously bad this year. Has been playing some really bad backups. I expect them to get some guys back this week based on the injury reports. They're going to get potentially UTC legend Cole Strange, second-year player, third-year player, young player, back in the lineup. A big boost for them over guys like Sidey So out of Eastern Michigan this past year, rookie out of one of the Michigan schools, who's been playing valiantly, but has been a real boon to their offensive success. Buffalo, for their part, injury-wise, I mean, we've talked about it, JT. This Buffalo team got murdered by the turf in London, and maybe the buried lead from the Titans-Ravens game is that nobody died, which was what we were expecting to happen. It didn't happen. It did happen for the Bills, though. They've lost 3 massive defensive starters for the entire year. All 3 are massive downgrades on the defensive line, at the cornerback position, and elsewhere in the secondary at the linebacker position. Those guys, the starters to backup drop off for all 3 of those players is really, really big. 3 of New England's losses this year, by the way, just from a statistical standpoint, 3 of their losses this season have been by less than 1 possession. I think the Pats are going to be able to run in this game. Again, the number is too big. Give me Buffalo to win by probably a touchdown, but I think that 9 is simply too big. I'll take New England plus the 9 points.
I was looking up the Steelers and how good Mike Tomlin is,
Mike Tomlin,
especially as an underdog here. I was getting my ducks in a row because, listen, I think the Steelers are in a really nice spot this week. 56-31-4 all time against the spread as an underdog under Mike Tomlin. He's 45-20-2 against the spread as an underdog from week 5 forward, including 37-30 straight up on the money line. So as the season progresses, this team gets a lot feistier down the stretch here. They get a little hotter. Of course, Mike Tomlin has never finished under 500 as the head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers. So this team continues to get better as the year progresses, and especially they're coming off the bye, which I think is the most interesting part about this. Have they been bad coming off the bye against the spread? Yes, they are 10-11 all time against the spread with extended rest. However, this is the 4th time the Steelers will play off a bye under Tomlin, where their offense is averaging 20 points per game or less. In the 3 games before this one, they are 3-0, both straight up and against the spread, coming off the bye in that spot. Off extended rest as well during the regular season, Kenny Pickett is a perfect 4-0 straight up and against the spread in his pro career, covering the spread by 7.3 points per game. I'm expecting a bounce back spot here for the Pittsburgh Steelers. They get Deontay Johnson back. That defense gets a little bit of a rest here. And I'm expecting them, despite Cooper Kupp maybe having the game of his lifetime, which it seems like he's getting hyped up to have, I'm expecting a big time game.
I like it. I like the pick. For my 3rd pick of the week 7 best bet gauntlet, I'm taking Philly, giving 2.5 points against Miami at home, a home favorite of under a field goal. This is all about picking the right spot to fade the Miami Dolphins. Okay. Miami has been a juggernaut this year. They have been the best show on turf. Okay. They are so much fun to watch. Nobody is discounting that. However, I really, really like this spot for Philadelphia for a couple of reasons. Number 1, JT, and I know you don't like this pick at all, but I'm gonna put you in a mind trap right here. We've seen Miami get broken by a team once this year, right? Who was that team?
The Buffalo Bills.
Right. And in that game, what was the thing that they did that allowed them to beat Miami? I'll answer the question for you because I didn't set you up for this. They got pressure on Tua, who has been incredibly clean this season, right? He's 35 pressures allowed by the Miami Dolphins through 6 games. League best by a pretty significant margin. Tua's been so clean. When he's given time to operate, he's been surgical. When he's not given time to operate, you see some of the warts come out. And this Philadelphia team defensively up front, that's where the strength of their defense is. Their secondary, there's some issues there. I think that the Miami secondary or the Miami receivers are going to give that Philly secondary some issues if the defensive line does not get home, but I think that they will. I think that this Miami offensive line is not great on paper. They're due for some regression. I think this is one of those games where Tua is under a lot of pressure. It's supposed to be a 40-degree day, cold, wet, and windy in Philadelphia. So I'm betting on the bounce back spot for Philly, who was handed their first loss of the season last week, fading the early season hype in Miami. Philly has, by the way, I don't know if you've seen Philly's schedule the next 8 weeks is an unbelievable gauntlet. I mean, it is brutal. This feels like a must win for them in order to not, if they can win this game and then go 500 over the next 8 weeks or whatever, then they're going to be in good shape. But this is a big spot for them before they really have to hunker down against some really good teams right in a row. And one last thing, Jalen Hurts has not been very good under pressure this year, statistically. But the Dolphins have not defensively been able to bring pressure against anybody, really. So I think that he's going to be clean in this game. I think that the Philadelphia offense can absolutely hang with the Miami offense in a boat race or in a fireworks show. So give me Philly to win by a field goal or more at home.
Yeah, either way, it's going to be must-see TV. So we're going to have to do our episode sometime either after that or before that because it's going to be a good game nonetheless.
Agreed.
My next pick here, this is my falling knife of the week, I think, that I'm trying to catch here. And I'm going to go with the New York Giants plus 2.5 versus the Washington Commanders here. A couple of reasons why. Ron Rivera versus the Giants all time has just not been a very profitable coach. He's actually going up against the team that he's least profitable against the spread at. He's 3-7 all time, 1-7 against the Giants against the spread as a favorite, and then 2-4 against the spread versus the Giants with Washington. So a couple of those come from Carolina, but either way, he does not play this team very well. Also, Ron Rivera is a much better coach as an underdog than he is a favorite. 59-43-2 against the spread as an underdog, but only 47-51-2 against the spread as a favorite with Washington and Carolina. And the Giants have historically covered against Washington. Last 20 years, they are 24-15-1 against the spread, including 2-7 in their last 9 meetings. Dable is also 2-0 against the spread for New York against the Washington Commanders. Listen, I think Tyrod Taylor is doing a fine job for them if he continues to fill in there for Daniel Jones. But either way, I think, once again, this is a roller coaster season for the Commanders. They lose pretty badly, then come back last week against Atlanta and get a pretty decisive win. Now they're going into MetLife to play a Giants team who really is just lacking an identity and could really use a win right now, especially with the kind of relationship between the Giants and their fan base. And as a team that is pretty profitable right now against the Washington Commanders, I like the value, so I'm going to take the Giants plus 2.5 as a home dog.
It's the right pick. It's the right time, I think, to drop this falling knife. No, to catch this falling knife. I'm going to be betting that along with you. For my fourth pick of the Week 7 Best Bet Gauntlet, give me Denver plus 1 at home against Green Bay. JT, when I saw this line, I said, this line stinks. I mean, it stinks. Something smells with this line. And then I got into some of the numbers. And this Denver team as a home dog, we love home dogs. Betting home dogs is profitable all the time. This Denver team we're worried about the full-blown tank mode, right? That's the concern. But assuming they're still trying to win, I think that they are at this point. I think that they are capable of beating what is a inflated Green Bay team, in my opinion. First of all, it's a pros Joe's game. Okay. We've got, 39% of the bets on the Broncos, but 61% of the money, the big money bettors, 22% differential in the Broncos' favor. And I just think that this Green Bay team is not as good as they're made out to be. I think that the Denver defense is pretty weak. Obviously, it's been historically bad at times this year. But I think the Green Bay offense is pretty weak as well. So I think this game comes down to the Green Bay defense versus the Denver offense. And part of me can't believe I'm saying it. I kind of think that the Denver defense is going to win that battle. I think that Denver wins at home in a gritty, gross game by 2-3 points, a field goal. I think that Denver wins this game outright as a home dog. Give me Denver plus 1.
Yeah, that could be a very interesting game, especially with how Jordan Love likes to just throw the ball up sometimes. So turnovers are the deciding factor there. With my next pick here, and look, the thing you got to do this week, you got to fade Kirk Cousins in prime time. Like it's almost
we
an
got a
automatic
Kirk prime
lock.
time spot.
It feels like
no.
At night. Yes. We at night he is 11-19 straight up, 12-18 against the spread, 4-3 straight up in primetime starts since last season. Against the spread is the main issue, though. 1-6 against the spread in those last 7 games. In his career, though, on Monday Night Football, Cousins has straight up stunk. He is 2-10 straight up, and against the spread on Monday Night Football, his 2-10 straight up mark is worst of any quarterback on Monday Night Football. Listen, right now you can get this on some books under the touchdown -6.5. Despite Kyle Shanahan's woes on primetime games, I do think that this San Francisco team is the better team. They're coming off a pretty embarrassing loss to PJ Walker and the Cleveland Browns last week. So I'm expecting that firework offense to get right back to it this week. So give me San Fran -6.5.
I like this pick. I want to, and maybe you disagree, so tell me if you do. I want to stipulate that I think it's important to get this one under the touchdown because there are some books where you get it at 7.5. I really don't love that bet. I don't love San Fran to win by 10, for example. But if you can get under the touchdown, which you can right now, you got to take that bet.
I have it under a touchdown at 6.5, and then there's also some books that have offered it at +7. But with plus money, like at +100. So I sprinkled a little bit on that.
I think that value
absolutely as well. But if you can get it -6.5, I'd do that. Or -7 is what I meant. Yes.
Right. There you go. Yeah. Just as long as it's without the hook, trying to cover that 7.5. With my last bet of the week 7 best bet gauntlet. It's officially tomorrow now here. It's officially Friday here in Dublin, so it's late for me. I'm taking Baltimore -3. They are hosting the Detroit Lions, and I have a couple of reasons why I really, really like this bet. Detroit hasn't really beaten anybody of note this year. If you look back at who they've beaten, okay, time to fade them because they've beaten Atlanta with Desmond Ridder, Green Bay with Jordan Love, Carolina with a rookie QB I'm totally blanking on his name. It's very late. Bryce Young. Thank you. And Tampa Bay with Baker Mayfield, who was really easily his worst game of the season when they played him. The market peak, I think, is here for Detroit. I'm hearing talk and reading articles of Detroit best team in the NFC this week. I don't know if you've seen this, JT. The hype is big with Detroit, and I love it. And my mother grew up in Detroit. I pull for Detroit. I'm not a Detroit fan, but I've got a lot of family members that love Detroit. I root for their success. I think we're losing our mind a little bit on them just yet. I think it's time to pump the brakes a little bit. It's a big opportunity for the Ravens here. I think that their defense, the Detroit defense, that is vulnerable to the pass, and I think it's time for the Ravens passing game to be able to shine a little bit in this game. You're getting outdoor Jared Goff, who's 33-31 against the spread with some wind and weather conditions to contend with. 16-mile-per-hour winds projected for this game, the windiest game of the week. And Detroit has running back 1 and 2 already out for this game. No Gibbs, no Montgomery. I think that running back 3, and by the way, running back 3 for them, I forget his name. He has not practiced yet this week. Craig Reynolds has not practiced yet this week. So running back situation, like the Detroit offense really operates through the run a lot. Their identity that's cornerstone for them. It's not existent right now. So I don't know what they're going to do. And then just statistically, trends wise, Lamar 18-4 ATS as a dog or a favorite of under 3, 12-1 ATS in his career against teams with a winning record against the spread. I love this Baltimore bet, but JT, apparently you do not, because this is our head-to-head pick of the week.
Yeah, so I'm going against you on this one, not because I'm with you. I think the hype is way too real for this Detroit team. So I'm not saying they're going to win, However, I just don't. I got to take the points here, and here's why.
Okay.
The Lions are 28-12 against the spread, which is good for 70% since the start of the 2021 season, and the most profitable team against the spread in the NFL. Dating back to last season as well, Jared Goff, you said, wasn't a great outdoor quarterback, and I agree with you. But Jared Goff has covered 7 straight games versus teams above 500 straight up. In his past 7. And then since that spot in 2021, he's 12-3 against the spread against teams above or at 500. It's the best mark in the NFL. And then Lamar Jackson has also not been great against the spread versus NFC teams specifically. In 16 games, and this is why I think that the Ravens are still going to win this game. He's 15-1 straight up against NFC teams in his last 16 games. However, he's 7-9 against the spread in those games. So like you said, I love the Ravens. I think this is a good spot to take the Ravens this week if you're looking for the money line. However, with those stats, I just had to take the points because I think it's going to be a closer game than people think. And I'm just going to ride with Jared Goff this week.
I'm surprised you didn't mention the number one thing that has me scared about my pick. And I don't know why I'm playing devil's advocate for you here, but this is what I'm scared about. It's what I'm concerned about. The stats about teams that played in London, that played internationally, playing the week after, they're very not good. I think it's in the 30s percentile, 30s percentages, excuse me, for teams covering ATS after having played in London the previous week. Baltimore had the option to take their bye this week like the Titans did, chose to forego that option. And so that concerns me a little bit, but we're going head to head there. So a recap of our week 7 best bet gauntlet. Looking to make some money, continue the 66% ride here. JT taking the LA Chargers, getting 5.5 points against KC. The Steelers getting the Rams getting 3 points against the Steelers. The Commanders getting JT, I'm blaming this on you. You wrote these notes very confusingly, okay? You put the numbers by the wrong teams. Okay, here we go. Starting over. The Chargers plus 5.5 at KC. The Steelers plus 3 at the LA Rams. The Giants plus 2.5 versus the Commanders. San Francisco minus 6.5 at Minnesota. And Detroit plus 3. There we go. For my best 5, I'm taking Tampa Bay minus 2.5 versus Atlanta. New England plus 9 at home against Buffalo. Philadelphia minus 2.5 versus the Miami Dolphins. Denver plus 1 at home against Green Bay. And Baltimore minus 3 against the Detroit Lions. That is our week 7 best bet gauntlet. May the odds be ever in your favor. And that is the end of our show for today. Appreciate everyone being here with us. Not live for the first time in a long time, JT. We've not gone live, but we'll be live again next week. Another game week for the Titans, getting ready for Titans Falcons on Monday. Not sure what the show is going to be about. I have an inkling that we'll be talking about some trade deadline potential trades for the Titans to be sellers. Maybe the Titans to be buyers. We'll see. I saw that one interesting odds market has the Titans as highly rated buyers for a big free agent wide receiver in the market. We'll talk about that and what the Titans could do as buyers or sellers, what would and would not be a good opportunity for them before the trade deadline. Until then, for producer JT, I'm your host, Easton Freeze. This has been the Hot Read Podcast. We'll talk to you on Monday.